Adam Sandler is topping the music charts. Frosty is just a snow kid. And oh, we forgot Kevin. Christmas in the 90s is here. Stay tuned.
You're tuning in to AfterBuzz TV's The Christmas 24/7 channel, keeping the spirit of Christmas 24/7. Give, forgive, be merry.
Welcome back, guys, to Christmas 24/7 here at AfterBuzz TV. And we are taking you back to our childhood, covering Christmas in the 90s, specifically today, our favorite movies. I am Suzi Grgurich, your host, an avid Christmas lover, especially of all things 90. And joining me is my lovely co-host, Miss Samantha Jacobs.
Hi.
She has a goal of going to the North Pole, but
Yes.
she is also another 90s Christmas lover. So we're so excited to be here. And basically today, we're just going to kind of give you our top 90s Christmas movies that we have seen and loved. We're going to kind of discuss what goes on in the 2019, this season that compares to those, some differences between then and now. And we have a really special segment, the Cozy Corner, for you. So we are here for you, and make sure you guys join in and give us your comments. But I want to start with you talking about some of your top 3 movies.
Yeah, so I was a kid in the 90s, and I loved Christmas movies. That was my favorite time of year, was when anything had to do with Santa, anything that had to do with Christmas, presents, giving, I was always there. So my top 3, I'm going to go from 3 descending order. So 3 would be Nightmare Before Christmas. And this is a big debate because people are like, is this a Halloween movie or is this a Christmas movie?
100%. And I think a lot of people, I always kind of think of it as a Halloween movie, but then it is a Christmas movie.
Yeah, ultimately, I feel like it is a Christmas movie just because he's curious about that holiday. You know, he's already living in that Halloween land, and it's spooky, very much so, but it's also, that's the point of Christmas, you know, bringing people's hearts and changing them and letting people understand, like, the point of giving or imagination.
And I think for, like, an animated movie, it was fantastic, and it's still a top holiday movie of all time, I think, for most people, and I think it's one of those that everybody needs to see.
Yeah, it's what happened is the ABC Family, when they do the 25 Days of Christmas, this movie is always played during the Christmas time, and everyone is always wondering, because they just started this year the spooky stuff with Hocus Pocus, and since they're now with Disney, like, they kind of did that double attachment, and it wasn't on the Halloween one. So they're saving that as a Christmas movie. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
I definitely watched it during the Christmas time.
And you also have 2 other movies that you just absolutely love from the 90s. Tell me about those ones.
Yes, so my second favorite would be The Santa Claus. It's a classic. Oh my gosh.
Tim Allen.
Right, and they go from 1, 2, and 3, and everyone's like, oh, is there going to be a 4 eventually, especially after Toy Story 4 came out, and Tim Allen is in that, of course. But I love this movie because it was something for the family. I just remember being with my parents. I'm an only child, so I'm always with older people. So this movie kind of made me feel like a kid, but my parents were laughing and enjoying it too. So it was a good one.
I don't know anyone who doesn't enjoy the Santa Claus.
Right?
It's another movie from the 90s. I think that's something that's really interesting is when you go back to some of these movies from the 80s and the 90s, specifically this decade, they still, kids that are now, you know, young and growing up, they can relate to all of these movies. And so I just think they have such a nostalgia to them.
Yeah, and it's cool because the writing, while I was watching it, we'll go into this deeper later, I was trying to find out, like, how different is this movie now? How much change is there? And honestly, there isn't too much. There's some, you know, obviously culture and rhythm and stuff like that, but it's still a classic. It's still beautiful.
Do you think that's something, though, with Christmas movies, just that they're timeless and that when you watch them, that a lot of them kind of definitely all have kind of that same meaning, and there really isn't a lot of change in them?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just keeping that magic. Okay. So it's like at the end, no matter what the beginning or the struggle is in the beginning, there's always that happy ending, but it's not that happy ending that you always get in the fairy tale. It's more of the magic that we don't necessarily see, but it's more of a feeling. I guess,
Yes.
in these Christmas movies. You cry or whatever.
I cry in all of them. It's typical of me. What's your number one 90s
My
Christmas movie?
number one Christmas movie, which I played while I was typing this out, is The Muppets
course.
Christmas Carol. It is such a classic, and it's really funny because when I talk to younger generations, they don't necessarily know who or what the Muppets are.
Right.
And that is so shocking to me because they're such an iconic, legendary group of guys. Or not guys,
Yes.
but like gang.
Right.
And I can't imagine Christmas without that movie.
No, and I think if you have young children right now, it's a movie that they need to watch. Because again, I think the Muppets are just, they're classic, and it's something that we grew up with.
Yeah.
And that, again, is one of the top movies
It's
for
just
me,
so
especially.
fun. Yeah, it's so fun. The music's good. You could listen to it whenever you want. It's just a cute movie, and it just really makes you think, like, you really go through the emotions with Michael Caine. And that's
Right.
cool because he's an amazing actor. And that could be part of it, too. If it was somebody else,
Right.
would this movie be as good as it is?
And probably not. There's a lot of that, that goes along with that. Do you know, are they doing another Muppets Christmas coming up or anything like that? Have you heard anything?
I haven't heard anything. I know.
that
It's
they
a
would.
bummer. I wish they would, too. I wish at least, I know with Disney Plus coming out,
Right.
it is now on the Rolodex. So
Okay.
when you are on Disney Plus, you do see Muppets on there. So there's Muppet Babies. They have all the Muppet movies, and the Muppets Christmas Carol is on there. So maybe they can bring it back.
Do you have a favorite part of that movie?
My favorite part, I don't know why, was the Marley and Marley ghost part.
Yes.
Because I don't know if I just liked this song specifically, but the way they made them look ghosty, because all the other ghosts were a little bit more scary besides the jolly one, but this one, even though they were spooky, it was still fun.
Right.
And I wanted to hang out with them and still laugh and be with them.
So you like the spooky movies?
Yeah, I know. Is that like a spooky Christmas person?
Well, Santa Claus is a classic, but I love your choices because, again, those are just ones that everybody needs to watch. So I think it's great. I'm always laughing because I'm the rom-com queen.
Yeah.
And so I am a big fan of I'll Be Home for Christmas because it starred Jonathan Taylor Thomas, who I had a huge crush on. He was like my little 90s crush. But I think what's great about that movie is that he is kind of a kid who's a little college kid, a little high on himself, and he has to dress up as Santa and get home for Christmas across the country, and he discovers Christmas magic. And I just think that it's one of those, for me, I mean, I loved it because of him, but he kind of finds himself and, kind of learns what Christmas should be all about.
Yeah. Which I think is important when that preteen, teen age,
Yeah.
I don't want to hang out with my family. Why is this, the way it is? I get a vacation.
Right.
I don't want to go to school. So that, it's something we can all relate to no matter when.
Yes.
So.
And I think that still relates now. And then, of course, While You Were Sleeping with Sandra Bullock, because, again, it's just this romantic Christmas comedy, and if there were a movie today, if they did that movie today, I think it would be just as great. But I love it just because, again, it's just a heart-filled movie. She's, struggling. He falls down in the train and gets into a coma. She makes up that he's his fiance, so I think the whole thing is just romantic for me.
Yeah, I love it. I personally love it. I lived in Chicago for 8 years, so the fact that it was based in Chicago, that's just automatically. And there's another classic movie that's also based in Chicago coming up. But yeah, it's just, and I love Sandra Bullock in that movie. I don't know what it is, but it's so natural. Like her just being the ticket person and just, being average. Not to say she's average, she's gorgeous, but it's a very good movie for her.
And of course, she falls in love with the brother that is, the put-to-do great one, or so we think. And then, of course, at the end, she ends up falling for the other brother, and he proposes, and it's just magical, and I'm crying. And, of course, While You Were Sleeping is a classic, but you can't escape the 90s without some Home Alone with Macaulay Culkin, which is my favorite 90s movie of all time. Everything about it, I can't even describe. I love this movie more than probably any holiday movie ever.
Yeah. Well, to play devil's advocate, there was an article going on saying, is this a Christmas movie or is this just a movie based during Christmas time? because it doesn't have that same, glow and magical feeling
Right.
that most Christmas movies have, but it's still obviously an amazing movie.
Right.
It went on to do sequels. So
Yes.
what would you say to that question?
That's actually a good question, because if you go, now I'm going to want to rewatch it for the 800th time. It is true. It's taking place during the Christmas holidays, but it's more about Kevin and more about him saving their home from the burglars and the neighborhood, and him just being left by his parents, which I find so sad. But you could probably have done that movie in some other format and it wouldn't have been a Christmas movie. But I just think because it takes place in the holidays, there's holiday music, it feels Christmassy to me. But I think that's a very fair point.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would say it was a Christmas movie too, just because he's alone.
Yeah, on
he's
Christmas.
Literally alone on Christmas. Like, his parents didn't care or notice or,
No. And I think there's like the obvious hustle bustle of the holidays that we all go through every year, whether it's family or shopping. And we're kind of reminded of that, like just this huge holiday family, and then they forget him. So, I mean, it's definitely a Christmas movie, but, it's more parents leaving him and Kevin. But he's alone at Christmas, so it's sad.
Yeah.
I think the New York Home Alone might be a little bit more Christmas forward, but it takes place in New York.
Yeah.
But that is my favorite one, would have to be Home Alone. But I think one of the things, too, that's interesting is that most of these movies have something right now, and there's obviously Christmas movies in 2019. And do you have any comparisons to some of these movies of your past that you like that are coming out now?
There's a few, like for 2000s, like for the Santa Claus, there's this random guy, and now he's kind of stuck into this, he's Saint Nick now.
Right.
And there's not movies that are just like that, but they're kind of similar. There's a new movie on Disney Plus called Noelle.
Right.
And so they're the kids stepping into the shoes of Santa, and it's the debate between, does the daughter want to do it or does the son? And the son obviously is supposed to.
Yes.
And so it's kind of this dilemma.
Right.
So you can kind of see the struggles of the same, like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I have all this responsibility.
Right.
Or you can do the reverse and with something like Elf, where he is literally an elf from the North Pole coming into our world.
Right.
So that's also an amazing Christmas movie.
Yes.
But those were the only ones that I feel connected, at least, to the premise of Santa Claus and using imagination and having that hope of belief.
Right.
But for Christmas Carol, there's been Christmas carols made almost every year.
Right.
And I guess the most recent one that was actually in the theater would be the Jim Carrey animation. And because it was kind of like Polar Express, where the animation was really detailed, it was kind of too spooky. People kept saying, like, oh, my kid was too afraid of it, but then they also loved it. So it was kind of more on the creepy end than of the classic end.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know. I feel like the Muppets is the way to go, but
I agree. It's interesting, too, just because, again, this year we have Last Christmas with Emil Clark, and I would say just, again, it's an all-around romantic comedy during the Christmas season. So that, to me, is kind of like, oh, while you were sleeping. It's just that fuzzy feeling of people falling in love. But there is a twist at the end of that movie, which I will not give away, so everybody go and watch that. But it's actually interesting because they tried to do a remake of Home Alone, and it's called Alone at Christmas, with 3 daughters that are stuck home alone, and a Santa Claus is trying to break in. And it's just interesting because I think it is very hard to ever compare with Home Alone. So I think that to me, and this kind of takes us right into what we're talking about now, that movie could still be made today and it'd be pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So I think when we talk about like how 90s kids do Christmas now, if you take these movies that we're talking about, like in some of your movies, like what are the differences that you see?
For the Santa Claus, there's you start off with the negative. So it's like the divorced parent, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And the parents don't get along, and that's where the rivalry is between mom and dad. Right. And he's crazy because he's telling his son he's Santa Claus versus we are doctors and therapists and we can, that doesn't exist.
Right.
But I feel like in a more modern day stuff, we're trying to promote the kindness more in this generation. And there would probably be more co-parenting.
Right.
I feel. But I feel like this movie would still, if they did a 2000s version, it would still be the same for the most part, except for technology or whatever we have
Right.
you. So, I don't know. I mean, even in
Yeah.
1994, whenever this came out, they make a soy milk reference. Like, he was like, I'm lactose
Yeah,
intolerant.
I
And he
saw-
was like, it was soy milk. And I was like, would they say almond milk or oat milk now? Or would it still be soy
almond
milk?
milk or like a turmeric latte
Yeah,
instead.
or something. I thought that was really cute.
I think that's super interesting, though, about, again, with Christmas movies, like the 90s are so our time, and we love these 90s movies. But many of them, for kids in 2019, if they watched any of these movies, they can relate pretty much to all of them, except for usually just the technology is what has made these movies different. I mean, and again, what about in any of the other movies that you've...
For the Muppets, for the most part, it would just be the animation.
Right.
I don't think people are used to seeing Muppets or anything automatronic-ish.
Right.
Unless you're actually at a theme park where you see that. It's not something super common to see on the screen anymore because of the evolution of
Right.
animation in 3D. So I don't think that, I guess for going back to the Santa Claus, the pop culture references too
Right.
would be fun to see.
I agree.
So they go to Denny's. Would it still be Denny's? Would it be somewhere organic? Like, would we
Very true.
take upon those type of little nuances?
Some of their clothing is always going to be a little bit
Yeah.
different. But again, if you just redid Santa Claus now, you could still have that same exact movie just with some little differences. And that's kind of what I think too with, some of the movies with Home Alone. When you watch it, decorations are still generally the same. We're still using a lot of that. We see the chaos of Christmas, the Christmas tree. Somebody always oversleeps. Some kind of catastrophe happens at Christmas. So then I think the only difference would be, if they had cell phones and the power went out, they wouldn't have missed their flight.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have forgotten Kevin. So I guess we need to not have cell phones for this movie to exist. And While You're Sleeping is still the same, too, for me. I mean, except for the clothing, it's generally like a feel-good romantic comedy that you could do in this day and age and make just as great of a movie, I think.
Right. And the beauty of that is people still take public transportation. People still have a
Yes.
working job. People still, we're still giving back to society. So the way their paths were crossed is still believable.
Totally believable. And I was thinking the same thing because he's, getting ready to take the train to his family. And that's the first thing that I thought. And thinking of this segment right here, I'm like, that's such a believable situation in 2019, and kids would still kind of get it.
Yeah. And even with online dating and all that stuff, like, people meet each other in person, guys.
Yes.
It's a thing.
That's a
It
way
still
to
exists.
meet
Yeah,
people.
it exists.
It's a great
There's
way.
hope.
And again, even like it's, when you watch the 90s, we really haven't seen, just kind of going back to decorations, they've gotten a little bit more, I guess you could say, 2000s. But I still put up all the same decorations that I did 20 years ago with my family.
Yeah.
We haven't made many changes. So I think that, again, a lot of these Christmas movies I just think are so nostalgic for people because we're still celebrating those same moments at our age.
Yeah, because we're still, like some of these movies we said are on the repeat for Christmas playing time. Like, there's still even older movies, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Like, we still have to watch them because that's part of Christmas.
And we wouldn't know because some of those aren't being made now. Even like a Charlie Brown Christmas, all these movies, you do need to watch them because there are things in there that are just parts of Christmas for you. But I think the 90s was just a great time. So many good Christmas movies. But I think Santa Claus and Home Alone for me are will go down as movies that everybody will always watch.
Yeah.
It's kind of
they're classics.
Yes.
You can't change, like we said, you can't change them. They're amazing. They give you the warm, happy feeling.
Right.
You watch it while you make gingerbread cookies. It's a good background or a full focus movie, And
I think with Christmas, that being said, we have a really fun special segment that we are going to have on all of our episodes. And this is called The Cozy Corner. And I think it's fun because it's a little bit of news, a little bit of nostalgia, a little bit of just everything Christmas. So I kind of want to jump in because we were just ending on that, like something very nostalgic for you from the 90s that you still do in 2019.
I would say Christmas Eve was a big thing for my family. We would always, my mom bought different jammies each year. So I have a ton of Christmas jammies. So when I left the nest, I couldn't decide which ones I wanted to wear, keep or like bring with me. Or when I went to college, I was like, why do I have Christmas jammies? I'm going to go home for Christmas anyway. But yes, having those Christmas jammies to wake up in, or just to make it a little bit more special, you know?
Yes.
Whether it was a onesie, or if it was silky, or if it had my favorite animation person on it, it was definitely something I always looked forward to. How about you?
And I think we are Croatian, and we make Croatian nut bread that my grandmother made, and we've been doing it probably ever since I was about 10 was when I started to learn, so in the 90s, and that's something that I look forward to. I love to bake. So every time I go home for Christmas, like that's the first thing I ask my mom. I'm like, when are we doing like our cooking day? And we all get so excited for it, and we have it on Christmas morning. So it's definitely kind of fun. It's something that we love to do. But speaking of 2019, you kind of found some fun pop culture Christmas items that are happening.
They are amazing. So since I love Christmas jammies, I am a sucker for Christmas sweaters. And pop culture has totally taken on this whole thing. And I personally had a Drake one, but the new ones that came out this year are Cardi B, like All I Want for Christmas is Shmoney. Like, yes, I want that. On my Christmas list. There's an Ariana Grande one that says opening Christmas presents like thank you next. And it's just cute because it's taking on all these things that were so huge in the beginning of the year, throughout the year, and slapping on teeth. Like this one is the best one. This is the meme, the cat meme
amazing.
With the girls from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and yelling at the cat. And that's a cute couple Christmas sweater. Would you wear that with somebody?
Maybe.
What if we got him for the show?
I think we should get him for the show. I actually would. You know what? I would actually make my boyfriend wear the cat one. If I, significant other, he could wear the cat because I'd want to be the Beverly Hills Housewives.
It's just right. Yeah,
sure.
it's just so funny. They came out with this so quick though because I think it only came out about a week ago and they're already like struggling to keep up with the people who want it on demand. So I mean, meme culture is also pop culture. So for the fact that this is on a sweater and people are ready to dish out the money for it, I mean, Merry Christmas.
I mean, speaking of the 90s, though, we've been doing ugly sweaters for as long as I can remember. I mean, and even if you watch anything from 90s Christmas movies, there's always somebody with some kind of ugly sweater.
Yeah. Do you remember a really ugly sweater that you wore growing up as a kid?
Yes.
What did it look like?
So my ugly sweater, it was actually a sweater that my dad had. And so it wasn't technically a Christmas ugly sweater, but it was the Christmas colors. But it had like red and green and swirls, and it almost looked like it wasn't tie-dyed, but it was bad. I wish I had a photo of that. It was just an awful sweater that like my mom would make us wear.
Yeah.
I know. What about yourself?
Oh my gosh. I was so embarrassed. My mom would make me wear this to church and I hated it. It had the like sequiny like puff balls with the confetti.
Yes.
I don't know how to explain it, but they were glowy little buttons and they had snowman on them, but each snowman had a different thing. So one had the buttons were really big, but they were actual fabric material. One scarf was actually like a silky part. It just looked tacky, like it was bad.
It's like a tacky Christmas tree.
And I'm trying to get rid of it, and my cousin has it at her house now, and she's like, hey, you have this sweater, and I'm like, no, I don't want it anymore. Like, get rid of this. I don't want it.
We had one that had like almost looked like tinsel that was like hanging.
Yeah.
But again, I think that's also kind of something fun because back in the 90s, just growing up, like you would go to church and you would wear your ugly sweater, your Christmas dress, and you kind of look forward to it.
Yeah, and you're, sing a little carols too.
Yes.
Silent Night.
But I think we all had some kind of ugly sweater at some point that maybe they weren't even supposed to be ugly sweaters, but we had to wear them. And also what's really interesting too, now that, Disney has taken over Fox, they have announced that they are going to do a remake of Home Alone. So I don't know how I am totally feeling about that because I don't know if you can make it as good.
Yeah.
No dates yet, no actor set, nothing more than the fact that they will be doing a whole new Home Alone.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I'm
I
not
like
happy.
have semi goosebumps. Like I'm kind of like, oh
Yeah.
wow, it's happening. But at the same time,
It's hard though. I feel like when you take some of these movies in the past, it's hard to make them as good when you try to do another version of
Right.
it. I mean, Home Alone, again, Santa Claus, these movies that we've picked, Nightmare Before Christmas. I mean, I don't know how you could top them because they were just such a part of the 90s.
yeah.
And they just give me like a warm and fuzzy feeling.
Yeah, the nostalgia. I get that you want to remake something because the technology has changed or whatever.
Right.
And that's the excuse directors or people have been tagging on to their
Right.
remakes. But really? Or can you remake it in the 90s and kind of
That's-
do like a cooler version of that? I would do that.
That I would be more on
Yeah.
board for, just
Yeah.
because you would keep it to the fact that it was a believable thing, even though I'm like, I don't know if I would ever have left my child in the attic, but I guess
Right.
it can happen.
One thing I did like was the Macaulay Culkin. I don't know what commercial it was, but he did this side by side of Home Alone. Maybe, what was it? 2000, I don't know. It was in the 2000s for sure.
Okay.
And he did a commercial, and it's a side by side of him acting like he was Kevin, and it was the same scenes from the movie, and they did a side by side, and it was so cute. I can't remember what product it was, but it got me. You guys got me. I would have bought
Yes.
it.
I
I think
mean-
it was like Google or something.
I think Disney's going to be doing, some projects, so I'm excited to see with that. But that's kind of our cozy corner. I think that I love this little segment for us because it's mostly about nostalgia for me and kind of the things for Christmas that we grew up with that we still love to do. But I don't know. I think that's kind of a wrap on our 1990s Christmas here at AfterBuzz. But we're super excited because our next episode we are talking about
Toys,
Yes!
presents,
all
gimme,
the gifts. Gimme. Which I still say now. So thank you so much. I am your host, Susie G. You can find me at Susie G Styles. And Sam, where can we find you at?
And you can find me at Story of Samantha.
And make sure you stay tuned because we've got a ton of 90s Christmas nostalgia coming for you in the next few episodes. Thanks, guys. Peace out from AfterBuzz 24/7.
Bye.
Chief Elf Officers Kevin Undergaro and Maria Menounos, Chief Spirit Officer Jeff Graham, and the entire The Christmas 24/7 channel, we would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV's The Christmas 24/7 channel. If you have questions or comments, email us at thechristmas247@gmail.com. Until next time, do your best to give, forgive, and be merry. Ho, 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 ho.